Sorry. Recommended decision coming around.
Doesn't this self-execute based on our...
We generally do it by consent agenda, that you approve the recommended decision.
Even if it's not appealed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Even if it's not appealed. That's just been the practice, David. I think by your policy it may self-execute. The second item on the consent agenda is approval of date changes for 2 schools. Again, you had a memo with the 2 schools requesting a date change.
These are both earlier?
I believe so.
I think so, too.
Yes, both earlier. Mm-hmm.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'd like to ask if we could amend it and pull this out separately, because I want to vote against this decision, taking action.
Sure.
After reading it very briefly. Do you mind?
Sure. Not a
Okay,
problem at
so
all. So we need a motion.
A motion to approve A and B.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve A and B. We have a second. Is that okay? Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Oh, yeah, aye.
And then do we have a motion to approve item C, which is the
Recommended decision in.
recommended decision? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion?
By the way, just for the record, procedurally, not substantively.
Yes.
Correct.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay, thank you. Discussion items, the update on school interventions with Jim and Jackie. Are they, I can't see behind me, Dr. Bennett. Are they
No, I
here?
don't see them here. Can we go, what about the textbook?
Let's go ahead, Zach's here, let's go ahead and do the textbook. And Mike had asked for a little bit of discussion on this item. Mike Zach is here with some information. He's got a handout for you. There have been some changes over the past year, and there are apparently some more changes in the works. So,
Yeah, so I went ahead and put together a memo that should be coming around right now. In the 2011 legislative session, HA 1429 was passed that changed the textbook adoption responsibilities of the state board and also affected what the schools does. So I've outlined a lot of the big changes here. Some of the key things to look at are, I remember about a year ago sitting here and having a similar discussion with you about math textbooks and approving that list. That is no longer responsibility of the state board. There will not be an approved list of textbooks that comes out of the State Board of Education. So the responsibility now is that the Department of Education will review textbooks and provide feedback to schools on the alignment of those textbooks to standards. But schools are not required to adopt from that list. If they find something that wasn't reviewed or something that was reviewed unfavorably, they're still able to adopt that textbook, whereas before they'd have to submit a waiver. I know the state board, I think in 2009, granted a blanket waiver. And so essentially we've just the legislature took that waiver and just put it into code and said if we're going to have a blanket waiver, let's just allow schools to use what they deem is necessary. So that's the big changes. So here are some of the individual things that the state board used to do that is no longer a responsibility based off those changes. So there's no contracts anymore. The Textbook Advisory Committee, which used to make the recommendations to the state board, is no longer an entity. You're no longer required to hold public hearings on the review since you're not approving a list. You don't have to make the textbooks available for inspection. The selection of reviewers and evaluators becomes a responsibility for the department, not for the state board.
So basically, we don't have anything to do.
For textbooks, there's nothing for you to do related to that. All of that is housed inside the department. The one thing to know about that that won't affect the state board, but it's an effect of previous decision made by the state board is reading textbooks are separate from a lot of this. So schools will still, if they don't hit that 90%, since they're required to use the reading plan, they'll still have to adopt an approved core reading program. But all of that, the approval of that happens within the department, and any appeals will be heard. We're putting together a committee inside the department to hear the appeals, and so that won't be on the state board either.
Will electronic curriculum be examined for being aligned with Common Core standard?
So we're doing the reading review right now. We did have one program that submitted for consideration that was fully electronic. And so a lot of it is we put out, we tell people submit what you want and we'll review it.
Okay.
But we don't go out and say, hey, we know about this
Right,
electronic
right.
program we're going to review. We can only review what's submitted to us for review.
Do the schools still submit, and that's a question, do schools still submit the textbooks they adopt to the state?
So that's at the bottom. There's a list of things that the schools are that are no longer required to do. The list actually,
Like if we adopt, Holt in math, do we have to tell the state that?
yes, but that's part of the changes that may be approved in Senate Bill 413. So if you look, on the second bullet under changes that affect the state board, you're no longer must examine a list of textbooks reported by corporations, no longer must notify corporations if the materials vary from the list, and you can no longer cancel the accreditation of a school if they don't comply with the textbook adoption decisions. The reporting that you're talking about all fed into that, and that's the only reason they reported that. That didn't get repealed
Okay.
with this. So as part of a larger cleanup bill, that's included in there. So we'll see what happens with Senate Bill 413. If that is passed this session, then you'll no longer be required to collect that.
Okay, so there's a new chapter, I'm sorry, Indiana Code 20-20-5.5. If folks are talking to me and say, what are we doing with textbook adoption, really, they need to go to these, and that tells us, but we don't have any obligation to the state board will no longer send out lists, we no longer send out price lists, we no longer do any of that.
That's all housed within the department now. And it's not a list. Publishers have to submit a guaranteed price to the department, and we'll post that.
Okay,
But
so guaranteed prices still come to the DOE.
Still comes the DOE, and
Okay.
the last bullet on here shows that it used to be if a publisher could charge no more than 120% of that price submitted in the contract, and now that's been reduced to they have to notify the department if there's a 5% variance or more. So that gap's been closed as well to help standardize the price for schools, so
So how's the money handled? I mean, really, every 6 years they have an adoption.
Mhm.
They adopt it, say they do adopt electronically or go the route of the school we just were privileged to watch. How does that money work out?
So school finance is still on a 6-year cycle,
Okay.
where you can charge 25% of the retail cost of the book for 6 years. The 6-year cycles for adoption go away. And so schools, before schools, when they adopted a textbook, they had to use it for either 6 years or until the state adopted new standards, and they needed a waiver to use it additionally. So now they can use it beyond 6 years. If it goes beyond 6, the number they can charge for textbook rental drops to 15% instead of 25%.
And fundamentally, the process now trusts local school boards and superintendents, et cetera, to find the right curricular materials that match the standards.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of this is
what we wanted.
a lot of this is what came out of the discussions we had last year about the math textbooks and why do we tell schools what they can use? Why not just let them make those decisions at the local level? So this is,
Do you provide any guidance as a department in those decisions?
yeah. So we have, so the new chapter 2020-5.5 puts out a list of what the department does, and part of that is reviewing textbooks for alignment to standards. So we're going through. There's not a whole lot on here right now because a lot of that we're trying to clean up that language in Senate Bill 413, but we will do reviews of the materials. How it stands in 413 is we would complete a review at least every 6 years or within 18 months of the adoption of new standards, so that we have additional information.
I apologize. I indicated earlier I had to leave a little early today, so.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think that's good, and you know what, and this is a clarification to us, and I think if you can get those, and I think this would be good to have in the superintendent notes,
Yeah, and
to send out weekly and just talk about those, because I still think there's some confusion, and I appreciate this.
we sent something out last summer and knew
Okay.
that there were some issues with the
Sure.
language. So we may wait until after March 15th when session closes. We know.
That's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But-
So we know if 415 gets
But even,
passed or
but
not.
even a comment in those superintendent weekly notes that understand that there has, you know, you might want to refresh yourself on these. This is what was shared at the state board. There is some legislation pending.
Yeah.
I think that's a smart comment.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Thanks.
Intervention?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We, myself and one of our specialists, spent some time this morning over in Indianapolis Public Schools meeting with senior staff there along with one of our lead partners. And so I think as a result of that, we'll start by providing an update on our lead partner work. Just as a reminder, that's work that's going on in two schools here in Indianapolis Public Schools, George Washington Community High School and Broad Ripple Magnet High School. This month, all of our lead partners have met individually with senior staff in Indianapolis Public Schools to discuss progress so far, to have very robust, open, collaborative conversations around how do we clear the deck in terms of changing the schedule, in terms of changing students' schedules, in terms of moving around instructional aides, Title I assigned coaches, to really clear the way to ensure these interventions can be implemented with fidelity and in a way that integrates with the existing school improvement initiatives at the schools, as opposed to supplants or just overlaps with. So we've been very, very happy with those conversations with the district and the lead partners, and the work will continue here this month, as you can imagine, given the I-STEP, the constructive response questions that will be happening, those tests will be happening this month. There's a pretty intense focus with all of our lead partners, be it in professional learning community time, through professional development, to provide teachers with really tangible strategies to help build student skills in preparation for those exams. So it's just a real high-level description of the month so far with that work. We're very much into the meat of the work in terms of moving past a needs assessment and getting into actually applied services that are targeted towards the demonstrated needs of the schools. And we've been, just to reiterate, we've been very happy with the way in which the district has been supportive of these initiatives and ensuring that the space is cleared and the factors are in place, the necessary characteristics are in place to ensure that the interventions can be implemented. So before we move on to the terminal school operators, I just want to pause there to see if there's any questions on lead partners before we move ahead.
This is not related, but it's related. Do we have any knowledge or tracking on what schools that are on the cusp that we're not dealing with right now, in terms of knowledge of what they're using or have historically used for professional development and remediation?
Sure. So there's one school that is on that cusp, Joe, and that is John Marshall Community High School here in Indianapolis. It is our only PL 221 Year 5 academic probation school. In the past, with our Year 5 approach, we've, just due to capacity and the sheer number of schools, we've only done one follow-up visit, sometimes two, based on need. This year, we've actually already done two and are planning to do a third to really track progress towards those recommendations as an outgrowth of the Year 4 Technical Assistance Team report. And professional development is something that we're looking at closely. Okay. This school in particular is also not only a Year 5 school, it's also a SIG school, a school improvement grant school. So there's a lot of people who, within the Office of School Improvement Turnaround, who are looking at the school and the work that's being done there, that's being pushed in. Their lead partner under their SIG grant is currently Pearson. So Pearson's really leading the way in terms of professional development.
So let me elaborate. I think we need to know what professional development's happening, because I'm hearing more and more of the same being used, and it would seem that's a really good way to loop into the failing schools, that and remediation. I don't know if Dr. Bennett realizes this, but in South Bend there's been some concerns about how remediation and 21st century money has been used that was supposed to go to remediation. there's huge concerns in our region as it relates to Head Start and what they're doing for professional development, which is not really bridging that gap. So that's why I say it's sort of related, but it's not related in terms of the question.
Sure.
You may not have the answer, but
Sure.
that's the heart of my concern.
Yeah, and we understand it. I mean, making sure that whether it's through a SIG grant or some district school improvement dollars or Title I dollars, that it all is articulated. Just as we want curriculum to be articulated across the K-12 trajectory, so too do we want the professional development to be able to provide teachers and school leaders with the training to provide the interventions to students that are needed. So we know it, I think, Joe, on a more school-by-school basis, particularly to those schools that are furthest along in that PL 221 academic probation pipeline. But I think your point about the general concern is one that we see playing out in districts and schools across the board. Yeah. Other questions on lead part? Tony?
Jim, this is just a more general question. There's some ambiguity, at least in my discussions with Edison, about what level of policy making this body is going to assume in relation to the turnaround operators. Is that something that is being worked out in the contract negotiation process, or is that something that we are going to get to decide in terms of how far into the minutia we want to go?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I think that just as a first point, Neil is suggesting something in the last meeting around having the turnaround school operators come and provide an update in March, February, March. We decided to do it in March, given that A through F was today. And so one of the things that I'll say now, is we're going to have them do that in March. Now the question is, your question is, going forward in terms of operation, what does that look like? And I think that in operation of your contract negotiations, that's something that we want to really iron out in terms of, is it monthly updates? What's the extent of the board's involvement with reviewing performance metrics, so on and so forth? So I think it's a discussion still to be had, to your point.
I'm speaking more specifically about maybe day-to-day policy making decisions. For instance, uniforms, school uniforms. Who makes that decision?
Sure.
The school turnaround operator or the State Board of Education?
The turnaround school operator would make that decision, but you all would be, obviously have the opportunity and the responsibility to ask questions around that and all other elements of that school turnaround plan to determine, to determine if, how does this all fit together? How is this in the best interest of the students in the community that they're serving?
Plan comes forward. We review it.
We review it. That's right.
Members have an opportunity to ask specific questions about things like that.
Yep. That's right.
You answer, or the TSO
They
answers.
answer, yep. That's right, Dave.
And then we approve the plan or don't approve the plan.
That's right.
Now that's different than what you just said.
So I think Dave stretched it out. I think he went all the way with it, which is to say that they would make the plan. They will present the plan, and that's what we're starting to do in March, is to provide a summary of the first 3 deliverables and a sense of progress towards deliverable 4. But then also coming back as deliverable 4 is finished to present it in full. And as a part of that, I think school uniforms would certainly be included, along with many other things. You all have a chance to ask questions and approve the plan.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm good.
So with TSOs, we have 5 buckets of information that we want to describe. And I'll let Jackie start with community engagement. We also want to talk about the deliverables. We want to talk about student enrollment. We want to talk about staff and principal recruitment. And we also want to just give you an update on some of the challenges of the work so far.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everybody. We're really encouraged with the level of community engagement that we're seeing from our turnaround school operators. And I'll start off with Edison Learning. Jim and I were there last week. Tony had the opportunity to meet us as we spoke with Mayor Karen Wilson Freeman and her staff about what's going on with Gary Roosevelt. She was very engaging, very complimentary, very much wants to be involved with the work. And so we were thrilled that you were able to join us, Commissioner Walker, very much. We've also went on to do we met with the Indiana Parenting Institute. We met with the PTA representative for Gary while we were there in Gary. So we had an opportunity to also meet with some parents and with the Gary Chamber director, the business community there in Gary, just to see what their thoughts were on the community engagement and what Edison was doing. And they're very much wanting to partner with us on all aspects of the school, mentoring programs, all types of things. So we're really excited about that. And that Edison is, not only are we meeting with them, but Edison is meeting with them as well. They also had the opportunity to be on Tony's radio show. They had a call-in show, and they took calls from the community, which we thought was very exciting for them to do that. They've taken out some ads in community newspapers, and they've had some parent forums as well. Another piece of what Edison is doing is very exciting to us. From the community, they suggested that Edison set up a Facebook page for doing student recruitment and retention, and Edison has taken that ball and run with it. They are in the process now of creating a Facebook page for Gary Roosevelt. So we're very excited that they took a suggestion that came straight from the community, and they're now enacting that. We think that's very exciting.
And just add to that, the suggestion came from meetings that were an outgrowth of something that Tony had suggested they do. They had set up a series of meetings in public places, libraries, and so on in Gary to have conversations around, what it looks like next year. And Tony and I think others had strongly suggested to get into some of the housing authority complexes. And so this is an outgrowth of some of those meetings in those housing authority complexes. And Jackie will say more about some meetings that are also, spurring from that as well with more parents and students. So appreciate very much that feedback and that they have gone in there and done that. And this, I think, is going to lead to a more grassroots recruitment and retention effort.
And as Jim alluded to, another suggestion that came from the meetings with Tony and from parents that we met just last week, they suggested that we get with the Gary Housing Authority to distribute flyers, to announce about the meetings that are going on at Gary Roosevelt. And they made that connection this week, and that connection is now going on to some action where they're able to drop off flyers about any meetings that's going on with Gary Roosevelt, and it'll get straight to the residents of several of the housing projects that are right around Gary Roosevelt. So we're very excited about those developments. It's just exciting to me that these came straight from the community. They went to Edison, and Edison jumped right on it. So we're just really excited about those developments. I know it doesn't take much to please me, right? Okay, I think that's just exciting. You have to be in community engagement that makes my mouth water. I love it. Okay, all righty. I'll move on then from Edison to Charter Schools USA, which we're excited about them as well. They had a hiring fair just...
Let me just plug in two things before you leave Edison.
Okay.
Sure. I'm not sure you are aware, but the Edison forums that were held last week, there have been some media coverage about no one showing up. Those were filled. 50 plus people at the forum last week. Also, another significant piece is that Edison, as well as our mayor, have both embraced the idea of having an alumni advisory board to sort of work with Edison to, bring in the community factor in terms of some of the policy decisions they're going to make. And our Karen Freeman Wilson, the mayor there, has agreed to chair that board and help appoint that board.
I didn't want to put that out there because I didn't know where she was on that, but yeah, she expressed that to Jim and I as well. Well, you were in the room, so yeah, that was great. Yeah, we're really excited about that. One more, oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Tony, where'd you graduate?
Washington, D.C.
My question is, are you finding in the community engagement group some pull because there's also activity going on, introducing the voucher and new charters coming in? And I'm just curious because you guys are in a unique position. In Gary, you have a lot of charters and you have a large number of vouchers. So I was just curious if that was one of the issues.
We hear some discussions on that, some about charters. Matter of fact, we were able to help some people that were looking for buildings to start charters, and Jim was able to take off his turnaround school hat and put on that hat and try to help them with that. And we're also hearing a little talk about vouchers and how they're helping the community up there as well.
So it's not really distracting your work for recruitment. It's kind of just educating the parents.
No, it's all education reform all together. So
Right now, I believe a lot of people in the community are seeing Edison's intervention as a positive thing. And if we set it up right, I think it will be in high demand as far as parents wanting to have their children go to that facility. One thing that I think we're going to have to sort of hold their hand on is working out a relationship between Edison and the Gary Career Center. I know they're going to go over there this week, but that's going to really require some probably hand-holding with the Gary Community School Corporation to make sure those facilities and programs are accessible to Roosevelt students.
In some of our discussions, actually, when we were there, some of the community partners expressed that same concern. So thank you, Tony, for that. Just one more thing, and Joe reminded me of this. Just as I was coming here, I got a call from a parent in Gary who wants to set up a focus group of students for us to talk to. We're going back up next Wednesday, so we're just really excited about now the opportunity to actually talk to students from the schools. So that's another great development, I feel. Now back to Charter Schools USA. They had a hiring fair last night. They had a steady stream of candidates coming in. They hope to hire about 300 non-teaching, teaching staff, all types, custodial, all that type of thing. And they had a nice steady stream of people coming through the hiring fair. Last night it was held at Ivy Tech. They have also been on the Amos Brown show to announce the job fair, so that was great. They've also been on there taking call-in from the community as well, so that's really great. We met with them and the Southeast Neighborhood Development Corporation yesterday, their education committee, to collaborate on community engagement, so that's coming along very well. There's been a concern about the social needs of the parents and the students at Howell High School that is in the catchment area of Shepherd Community. And so we've put them together. Charter Schools USA and Shepherd Community are having conversations this week on how they can fill that role for the parents and the students that are having social needs as well. So that's very exciting to us. Ed Power is our next turnaround school operator. They have worked out an agreement with the Arlington Community Council and the NAACP to map out a community engagement plan. So that's going along very well. They met over soul food, as we were told, to work that out. So that, hey, however it happens, we're happy about that. So they're working on that. Met with Regina Marsh, who's with the Forest Manor Multi-Service Center, just yesterday. They're planning to do student recruitment beginning in May, doing door-to-door to reach these parents, to find them. Ed Power had a community meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it was very low attendance, so they're not going to just sit and wait for the parents to come to them. They're going to go after the parents. They're going to go door-to-door, put teams together. She's going to pay these folks to find these parents. We're also going to go a step further. Regina and I talked about going to the grocery stores where people have to buy groceries. So we're going to try to nab those parents as they're coming in to purchase their groceries and do student enrollment right at those grocery stores. So we're trying every angle to reach out to our parents, and we plan to do just that. Ed Power will also have a hiring fair February 11th at the Tinley School, so they're also in the process of hiring staff as well. All of the turnaround school operators right now are working on reviving the community advisory councils that have been in all of the schools. They're working on seeing who those people were and maybe reviving those people or even finding new people to get that interaction between the turnaround school operators and those councils so that we can have a good working relationship on what needs to be going on with the school through the community.
That's correct. Can I just ask a question?
Please, Tom.
Maybe I didn't hear this right, but Jackie, were you saying that DOE is involved in student solicitation?
Are we involved? I guess we're helping our turnaround school operators with suggestions on how to reach the students.
When you say solicitation, do you mean?
Trying to find students to sign up for the turnaround schools.
No, we want to be sure that they are engaging in a multifaceted approach to enrolling students and not just having one type of enrollment fair at one certain place.
I think we have to be really careful with that.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of possibility for conflict. We should not be getting into any direct solicitation of students to go into those turnaround schools.
Absolutely.
But see, Tony, the difference is, that was kind of my point earlier. There are these other elements that are out there that are recruiting.
Yes.
And I'm not saying I agree or
He's just saying,
disagree.
though, the DOE staff should.
Yeah, just DOE.
I
staff,
understand,
yeah.
but I just want to clarify, that's always been a touchy issue in every, especially urban school, because everybody suspects sports or, something like that. So that's happening in vouchers and charters. So the question begs to be asked, if our goal is to be competitive, is that going to be something we're going to have to talk about down the road? That's all.
You're saying, Joe, that DOE staff members
Not
are
staff, no, but
pushing vouchers
philosophically,
in charter schools, or
no.
is that okay?
But it is something that we have supported. We've
Yeah.
supported charters. We've got an in-house, charter commission.
Your point is we support a broad palette.
Yeah.
His point is we don't go in and say this
Personal,
part of the palette is
right.
better than that part of the palette.
And I would also add that that's consistent with what we're doing in Indianapolis Public Schools regarding Charter Schools USA and at Power.
So Jackie's done a good job of already kind of outlining one of the other buckets I want to talk about, and that is student enrollment. We talked about some, a multifaceted approach. She talked about some of the more grassroots enrollment through Facebook and parent meetings and student meetings. Gary, I want to say that and this is a challenge as well, here in Indianapolis, our turnaround school operators had worked in late winter to set up then in early 2012 some enrollment events here in Indianapolis. And when doing so, they contacted the district to ensure that that those wires weren't getting crossed. And the district had said that they had already sent out letters about what they were deeming choice events, where the turnaround school operators would have an opportunity to present about their vision for the school, but that the district would also have an opportunity to present about some schools, some choice schools within their district that'd still be operating. And so the turnaround school operators did actually attend these events and presented. The attendance was varied, as Jackie said. In some cases, the attendance was 6 families. In other cases, it was more. But we see this only as the beginning, not the end of the enrollment efforts. But it was something that the turnaround school operators agreed to attend. They worked with IPS to do them. But given that attendance was so varied, they're going to have to do more. They're going to have to do in different ways, as Jackie alluded to, and the same thing will happen in Gary as well. This is particularly crucial because of different deadlines that have been set. So IPS has set deadlines for making what they're sort of calling a choice deadline. And so on February 3rd, there was a form due where students would have to select which school they were going to attend, if they were going to transfer or stay at the school. And so this is of paramount importance because, as you can imagine, our turnaround school operators desperately want student-level data so they can start to plan appropriately to meet the specific needs of the students who will be serving. And so we'll be working with the district to get that data transferred based on those choice forms here in the next couple of weeks so that the operators can begin to develop those plans and those curricular programs to meet the needs of those students. So this is an ongoing process here, but it's something that we'll have to watch very closely this month to ensure that student data transfer really begins in earnest, given how close we are to really the effective opening day. There have been some movement in terms of early hires, so I want to celebrate in Indianapolis. There is this very famous, as many of us know, or we all know, choir teacher at Manual High School. We discussed, I think, in August, and when we all gathered around the table to make the intervention recommendation decisions. And he has been secured to continue to work at Manual under Charter Schools USA. We've attended a couple of enrollment events, and it's amazing to see the way that the students really gravitate to the school and to the traditions that he has already developed as the choir director there. And we're really excited that he and many others are beginning to be brought on board to these schools. Ed Power has identified their school leader for Arlington Community High School, as well as some assistant principals that will surround that principal to do more grade level or instructional work as well.
Jim, can I add,
Please.
as far as the Spencer Lloyd too over at Manual, one of our community partners, the Indianapolis Symphony
please.
Orchestra, has gone over there to the school to work with them to help him develop his fine arts department. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, just to develop a more robust, really instrument sharing, space sharing. They're famous for doing a holiday choir concert that is very well attended.
Just a question.
Please.
Number one, they become employees of charter.
They do.
Of
the
charter
operator.
school. They become employees of Charter School USA.
That's right, Mike.
They are no longer employees of the IPS. So
Not
therefore,
instantaneously, but going forward once once the contract expires. The teaching contract not expires, but plays itself out for this academic year.
okay, so right for this year, they're no longer an employee of Charter Schools. They are an employee of Charter Schools USA.
Not this
No,
year.
they've just committed to continuing to work at the school under the new operator going forward.
So they are still an employee of IPS.
That's right, sir. That's
So
right.
they still are part of the Indiana Teachers Retirement Fund.
And they still will be even under the operator. PERF and TURF, not PERF, but
Right.
TURF and the Teacher Retirement Fund will continue to be offered to those teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar wage.
I'm not sure what I imagine it is. I don't know it intimately in that example, but I think broadly defined, absolutely. They also do, as I think is the growing trend nationally, also some school level and teacher level bonuses as well based on performance. Yeah. So some of the challenges, and Joe has alluded to these as well, in terms of the rumors and some of the fear that comes up, both for students, parents, and staff. And I think that the more of these enrollment events that happen, the better off we'll be. We want to be sure that students are aware of all the options. I mean, this is in a choice environment to be sure, but we have some concerns about student recruitment to schools such as John Marshall, which is a Year 5 school. Some parents have expressed concerns to us about that, being sure that parents are aware that this recruitment is actually to a school that's identified as a Year 5 school. Just yesterday, we found out that there was actually another Indianapolis public school recruiting in the lunchroom of one of our turnaround school operators identified schools. So that's the kind of circumstances that our turnaround school operators are faced with and that we're up against. And we're going to have to continue to be open with you all, and they will be certainly next month. And Dr. Bennett has met with the Indianapolis School Board recently upon their invitation to give them an update on how things are. And so these are the kind of things that we express to them, and I think that we'll continue to have to update you on going forward.
I think we were able to get some specific issues on the table and start bringing some specific issues to resolution regarding just some disconnects between the turnaround school operators and the school district.
Right.
And also, just as an FYI, I am actually meeting with the CEO of Charter Schools USA and Dr. White tomorrow morning.
So between here and now, we want to continue to find ways to keep you updated as we're heading into, I think, a really critical period. And so we're going to, starting this month, this month will be Wednesday the 22nd of February, and we'll work with Becky to send out information about this. Both have here locally an in-person, which all are invited to, but also for those that are spread out across the state, a conference call to be able to just provide you with an update and answer any questions you might have, so that we're continuing to feed back information on a more regular basis. So that'll be Wednesday the 22nd of February, and we'll provide more information through Becky about that. And we'll look to do that continually throughout the spring and perhaps even going forward as the need presents itself. But just to reiterate, at the March Day Board meeting, we will have all of our turnaround school operators here to do presentations on the work so far, deliverables 1 through 3, and then the developing plan for deliverable 4. Answer any questions you might have as well.
Jim, could you email me a copy of the Phase 3 report?
Absolutely.
Just by way of comment, I'm somewhat uncomfortable with the fact that the contract negotiations are going on and we don't really have any idea substantively what they're talking about. I know this may be somewhat outside of your lane, but I would hope that whoever's doing those negotiations would not negotiate away any oversight authority of this board without consulting with us first.
Absolutely.
And secondly, with the pace of the Edison negotiation, I'm not exactly sure where that is at this point, but it needs to be concluded relatively soon, so they can move on to the point of at least starting to advertise positions and get things in place.
Absolutely.
It seems that apparently the Indianapolis, or one of the Indianapolis schools, is already to the point of hiring. We need to get to that point in Gary as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
This is an impression. Appreciate if you'd confirm or deny it, or decline it. I have the sense that when we go in and we are using the vehicle of assisting in Broad Ripple and George Washington, that the IPS entity is saying, great, come on in, because they don't view it as competitive. And when we use the vehicle of turnaround school operators, it sounds like they've gone fully competitive. And so they're in essence saying, we just soon put you out of business by recruiting all your students over to our other high schools. I guess that's fair play, but I want to make sure, and I don't mean to be negative about it, because I think it may just be the realities in which we find ourselves. But is that an correct impression, that you're getting differential receptions from the school district?
Yeah,
depending on because the concept of turnaround could happen within the district and with the full collaboration of the district. It sounds like they're a little short of that. Fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair, Dave. I think that also what we're looking for is not to circumvent this competition piece, because to your point, it's going to be there. What we're looking for is to be sure that data that's requested is shared, programs that are historic to the buildings have the opportunity to stay at the building, students are given accurate information, a chance, and parents as well. That's what we're fighting for. And I think there's some level of disconnect, but to Dr. Bennett's point, as he discussed with the Board of Commissioners a couple of weeks ago, there are some instances where that's happening, and there are some instances where we need to tighten it up. And we're working on that in short order.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Thanks for the report.
Thank you. Very quickly, if we may, before we finish up with board member comments, I mentioned at the beginning that we could make an announcement in a couple hours regarding AP, and I want to make that announcement. College Board today released their annual AP report of the nation, or to the nation, and it revealed that in the last year, Indiana ranked 6th in terms of AP success. We achieved the 6th highest one-year increase in students who graduate earning a passing score of 3, 4, or 5. If you combine that with last year's results, over the past 2 years, Indiana is ranked 2nd in the nation over a 2-year period, trailing only Connecticut for AP success. So it's a pretty substantial position we've put ourselves in, and I think it's our school districts are to be commended, and schools are to be commended as they do this. So I just wanted to release that.
Inside joke.
Anything?
Board member comments or reports?
I just have one request, if we could get legislative update on the status of some of or if there's a place we can go to.
Sure. I tell you what, Heather is preparing a complete
Good.
at the turn of the session as we flip. So she's going to have that, and we'll get that to you.
I'm asking in case there's anything we can do to help.
And she's going to have that on there.
You know, my best reference has been that Education Weekly that we get. And I don't know how accurate it is, but, but I mean, I'm reading.
It's always
it.
interesting reading, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It is. And, and I spent extra time with it just because they had a breakdown of all those bills.
So we'll make sure we get that out this week.
Make
Anything
note of
else?
that.
They got
Future meetings?
Just remember that next month, we're meeting on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, on March the 6th instead of March the 7th. That was decided at the last meeting.
Yes. The only other comment I had is that I was asked to bring up, and I know Wes isn't here, ethics training for ISNEP. You know what, there was a big deal about that after last year about ethics training, and I called, and my principals aren't unaware of some of that, and so we called our service centers, and they aren't necessarily aware of that either.
I'll check on that.
And that,
Today.
and again, that might be a nice thing to have in the superintendent's notes, because what are our expectations for the ethics training before we start administering the ISTEPs?
We'll get that. Thank you, Mike.
We'll do that.
Anything else?
So that's Tuesday the 6th, right?
Yes.
And I think I'll check my Google calendar here, but I think I got it.
Move adjournment?
Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.